Hi everyone, and welcome to SAMA, a program which invites experts each week to discuss their area of expertise. This week we're hitting 100, so welcome aboard. We're delighted to have Jordan Fallis to tell us how to get rid of brain fog and keep our brains healthy. Jordan is a health and science journalist and researcher and the founder of Optimal Living Dynamics, a website that has helped more than 1.5 million people improve their brains and mental health. His work has been featured in the Canadian Broadcast Corporation, the Canadian Medical Association Journal, and the Canadian Pharmacists Journal. Jordan has interviewed, consulted, and worked with more than 100 medical doctors, health practitioners, and leading researchers. He spends considerable time scouring for new medical research and writing about what he finds and applying the medical findings on himself. So welcome to the show, Jordan. It's fantastic to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So the main topic, I guess, is the brain fog. If you can explain what is brain fog?
Well, I guess it's mental cloudiness, and sometimes there's a cognitive impairment along with that. Some people experience like mental fatigue, or just like a lack of mental clarity. Sometimes people can have like difficulty concentrating as well and thinking properly, and they're confused. Sometimes even their memory gets impaired because of the brain fog. So it's a lot of different symptoms, I guess, because people can experience it in different ways, right? But in general, it's a lack of mental clarity and being able to, I guess, focus and absorb information optimally or the way you should absorb the information, I guess. So that's how I would explain it. Yeah.
How did you get involved with this research? What prompted you and got your interest in this capture?
Well, it started. So it was in 2010, and I got a really, really bad concussion. Well, I had two back to back, but the one in September 2010 was the really bad one. And then when I had that, I had trouble like concentrating. I had dizziness. I had fatigue. I had really bad anxiety and depression. I had it leading up to it as well, but then it got magnified after that.
Yes.
And so when I had the concussion, I went to doctors and they just told me to rest. So it was essentially post-concussion syndrome, and my symptoms didn't go away. Usually they say, rest for a week and everything will be fine, but that didn't really happen. So so I went to different doctors. They kept saying, well, we don't know what to do for you. They gave me antidepressants. They gave me different medications, sleep medications. Nothing really worked. And then I had to really figure out how to get better myself. And then with the help of certain like integrative physicians and naturopaths and functional medicine practitioners and energy medicine practitioners, and then with my research, and that's kind of, I worked with all these people and myself to kind of put it together and figure out how to get better. And then I did. But it was a long journey, and so that's how I got into it. My life kind of went in a weird direction after the concussions because I didn't see it coming, and then I just had no choice. I was always interested in nutrition.
Yes.
And so that's a big part of brain health as well. But and I was into like the paleo diet and stuff like that, cutting out grains actually leading up to my concussion. But then with the concussion, the food wasn't going to cut it. It was still a good part of it, but to get better, I had to go even deeper. So so that's how it all happened. It's kind of crazy looking back and thinking about it, but yeah.
It's quite often the case, isn't it, where life-changing circumstances or a sudden change, a sudden impact in your life, albeit negative, overall provides something so positive. And now you've reached out to 1.5 million people. That's quite a large number, Jordan.
I know. I didn't see that coming. Like I just started writing, and I thought, I'll just start writing on my website, and we'll see what happens. And then I started in 2015 the website, and then I like recently I looked to see how many people I've reached over that time, and it kind of blew my mind because there's people coming through the website and they leave and they go, and but then when to see that number, I'm like, oh wow, I
Yes.
didn't. That's crazy. So yeah, yeah, it's been interesting. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I've done what I've done so far. So yeah.
Now, you've talked about one cause of brain fog, which is your concussion.
Mhm.
Are there other causes of brain fog?
Yeah, there's a lot. I could probably go on and on with different causes, but I guess usually I tell people to start with food to see what their diet's like because
Yes.
I mean because you can go and look into other things, but if a person's eating a crappy diet, that could be one of the main causes of their brain fog, especially if they have food intolerances or allergies. So some people they may have undiagnosed celiac disease or just a gluten intolerance, and if they cut gluten out, their fog may dissipate.
Yes.
And then there's other food allergies too, like dairy, eggs, corn, soy, just the common food allergens, and that can contribute to inflammation and then lead to brain fog. Um, and then so that would be one of the main ones. I will say that a lot of people still they cut out these foods or they clean up their diet and they still have cognitive problems and brain fog. So it's not like a cure-all, right? But
Mm.
that can be one of the major factors that can contribute. And I usually tell people to start there because if they're still eating foods that they're allergic to, I mean, they can do all these other things and it's just
That's
not
right. Mm.
not going to make a difference. So then of course there's like food preservatives and chemicals as well, even chemicals in the environment like mold in particular. So I didn't mention it when I had my concussion. I was living in a moldy home as well, so that didn't make things much better. There's a bunch of black mold in the basement, right underneath my bedroom actually. So it was likely all up around in the walls of my room too. And so I hit my head, and then I was in this terrible environment. So that's another common trigger for brain fog for people, and a lot of people don't know that they're living in a moldy home and that the mold could be contributing because it's sneaky, right? Like it kind of you might move into a home and then it's moldy, but you don't feel sick immediately, and then slowly over time your health starts to deteriorate, your brain's not working properly, you can't remember things, brain fog. Yeah, so that's another thing that people I think need to keep in mind is not only what you're putting in your body, but what's around you in your environment. That's a huge part of it as well. Um, and yeah, so there's mold, there's the food, there's nutrient deficiencies too. People can just have nutrient deficiencies. So, you know, usually recommend people go to their doctor and check for things like vitamin D for sure and B12, iron. The some of the major nutrients that if you're low, your brain's not gonna be functioning optimally. So um, yeah, so that's mold and food. Those are the main ones that come to mind right now. But I can keep going if you want, or you
Oh,
can jump in and.
well, no, it's I like you taking the stage because what you're saying is interesting because most people think brain fog has got a viral trigger, but you've mentioned everything but viral.
Well, it can also have a viral trigger as well, right? Like I had practitioners check for EBV, like Epstein-Barr virus, but I never had it. So for me, it was never a factor for me. But yeah, that's another part of it. I know Dr. Klinghardt talks about retroviruses and how they're contributing to things like Lyme disease or not contributing to Lyme disease, but it's a lot of people who have Lyme disease also have retroviruses that can contribute to their symptoms as well. So yeah, that's another part of it. But in my case, anyways, it didn't seem to be a huge part of, I guess, my problem. Yeah.
Wow. Well, if 1.5 million, I've got to sort of pause there. It's good. It's a lot of people. Do you think it's rampant? Do you think that a huge swathe of the population has got brain fog, and possibly a lot of people have it that don't realize it?
Yeah, that's what I realized. I think a lot of people they may have it their whole life. Like, I mean, I think a lot of kids are sick nowadays too, right? And they don't know
Yeah.
it. They just grow up like, oh well, I'm not that bright, I'm not that smart.
Sure, sure.
The problem with what happened to me is I knew, like, I was doing great in school, I was doing great in my job and
Yes.
everything like that. Everything was fine, and then um, it was very noticeable that things were declining, right? So yeah, I think a lot of people, they just get used to it and they're not aware of it. And I think yeah, a lot of people are looking for solutions, and they go to their doctor, and I think people are getting fed up that their doctors will just say, oh, you're depressed, or it's just aging. That's probably the main two things that people hear. It's like, you're depressed, you need an antidepressant, or oh, you're getting older. And I think, to be completely frank and blunt, I think it's bullshit. But so, like, yeah, I just yeah, and so people are searching, and that's, I guess, why a lot of people found my website and they come back and read my stuff, is because they're desperate for good information and tools and strategies and things they can do to support their brain, right? And whether that's like taking certain supplements to support the brain, or it's working with like a practitioner or a healer to really improve your energy and vitality and your brain function. Like, I guess there's a lot of different ways to approach it, right? Like, people can just take things to cover up symptoms, and that's great too. Like, that can be helpful. But a lot of the time, people also want to feel like their old self, and in a lot of cases, when they go to their doctor, they don't get that. They get, well, doctors will try to cover up symptoms, but sometimes what they give for brain function, like, they might give an antidepressant and it won't actually help, right? So I find that a lot of people are just, they're lost and they're confused, and they're willing to try anything, right? So I think that probably explains why there's that many people I reached. Is it's just um, people are just looking for good information, right, and looking for help. So yeah.
You think that a doctor would ask the number one question, if you've got brain fog, you go to a doctor, the doctor should ask, is your home moldy?
Yeah. Oh,
Or,
absolutely. Yeah. Or what's in your environment, or like, how's your sleep, or like send you for a sleep study immediately. But it seems like, from what I've heard from other people and what I experienced, was, oh, you're just depressed. And it just seems like such a simple, like, it's just such a cop out to say, oh, you're depressed, here's a pill. It seems so lazy, I guess. And um
or once
yeah,
you, but once you have a label, then they can associate a label with a drug to heal.
right, yeah. And that's the way they do things, right? That's the model and the paradigm. And that's it. It blows my mind that it's so widely accepted. I feel like, well, I feel like a lot of people are, I guess, waking up and realizing there's different ways to do things and better ways to do things. So I think it's changing. But and the other thing is, a lot of people, they don't really care. Some people just want the pill. You know what I mean? That's fine too. But it's usually when people fall into situations like I did, and they went to the doctors and nothing worked, then that's when, or when things actually made things worse. Like, that's when people are like, okay, well, I need to go elsewhere. And that's usually when people, like, even doctors, sometimes they'll change their practice because they get sick and they realize, oh, what I learned doesn't even work for me. So I better adapt and change the way I'm doing things, right? And then that's how you see different doctors uh, like using alternative medicine or integrative medicine in their own practice, right? So yeah.
It's a shame they call it alternative medicine, isn't it? Should be the other way around.
Yeah, I hate it. Like, I hate that. What do people say? The people who are like extreme skeptics, they say, like, oh, if it was, what they call alternative medicine, that works, they call it medicine. You know what I mean? Like they make that joke that, like, everything that falls under science-based medicine is, like, that's the only way it should be, and that's the only thing that's proven. But I think it's faulty. It's not the right way to approach things, right? So
Yeah.
uh, and so, yeah, the word alternative medicine, when skeptics make that joke, it really really bothers me, because but
Okay, I won't make that joke.
yeah, no, yeah, yeah, no, I'll just yeah, I like complementary medicine, or integrative medicine is a better way to put it, or functional medicine is good too. But yeah, alternative sounds like you know, like I'm out in the woods sleeping under a tree and like
Yeah.
taking drugs or something. You know what I mean? Like it feels like so woo woo or something, but it's not. There's usually a lot of good research behind a lot of the things, I recommend, and the doctors I've consulted with, they recommend too. They're not just pulling these things out of the sky, right? Like
No,
there's
and the research is more than 100 years of research as well, like allopathic medicine. We're talking about, thousands of years of research.
yeah, that's the thing. That's what a lot of the skeptics don't understand, is that, like, you know, they're giving antidepressants that have been around for like 5 years to
Yeah.
kids. It's like, and that's just insanity. I don't know what they're thinking, but and yeah, a lot of things, plant-based medicines have been around for a very long time. So it's
And
anyways,
just
yeah.
touching on the children again, it's a travesty how a child could have it from as an infant, have brain fog, and and the parents not realize it, and the child knows no better. And then
Yeah.
the child will be labelled as having some sort of disorder. I was going to ask you, does autism or other behavioural labels that are given to children, could that be linked also to brain fog and similar triggers?
I don't know if it'd be. I would imagine that a lot of children with autism would have brain fog, and I do think a lot of the, I guess I would say, underlying factors that contribute to brain fog are also the common underlying triggers for autism as well. Because I mean, they're brain fog, and like brain fog is a complex condition, and it's hard to often figure out what is causing it, right? Because there's so many different factors that can be at play. And that's the same thing with autism. It's not as simple as one thing that's contributing to it. So
Right.
yeah, there's usually a lot of, I would say, oxidative stress going on, inflammation, and mitochondria dysfunction, and people who have brain fog, and children with autism too. And I'm sure a lot of children with autism or people with autism on the spectrum have brain fog as well, right? And I mean, it's all wrapped up into the condition. I would suspect anyway. Yeah.
Now, people that have got brain fog, if they went on a holiday and they had a total change in environment, they went from their toxic homes to a
Mhm.
sunny island paradise somewhere, and they had something like a 3-week holiday, would that be enough for them to perceive a change in their cognitive function?
Yeah, I usually recommend, if people think they live in a moldy home, the best way to test is, it's usually 30 days, like a month. So 3 weeks could still work, but they ideally would need to not bring any of their belongings, or like they'd have to just leave everything behind. That's the best test. There are tests you can do at home for mold, like the ERMI test. Um, but the best way is just to get out of there and, yeah, go on a vacation for like 4 weeks, 3-4 weeks,
Okay.
and then yeah.
Okay, so this is SEMA episode 100, and it's so blessed to have you with us, Jordan. Jordan's advice to everybody is to have at least a 1-month extended holiday to some warm tropical paradise place. And if your boss asks you why 1 month, you tell them you heard it on SEMA episode 100. The and that'll be a stir, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
just tell them that I said you can go, somewhere warm, and
Jordan,
yeah.
and he's got a lot of followers. Okay. So the physical things that cause brain fog.
Hmm.
We've talked about a little bit about the inflammation. Um, is it purely inflammation that causes the brain fog?
I think that's one of the contributing factors. There's oxidative stress as well. I think at the root of it, there's often mitochondria dysfunction as well. But yeah, there's other physical abnormalities that are wrapped up in that as well. So it's really not completely understood, right? There's probably multiple factors at play, but another factor would be like limbic system dysregulation is another part of it. So a lot of people, they may have like a chemical injury, for example, like maybe they're on some sort of medication and it causes adverse effect,
Gosh, what
or
am
they
I?
go through a highly stressful event, and then their limbic system starts freaking out, and there's limbic system dysregulation. So that's often another problem, especially with people who have chronic illness, that's another contributing factor, because a lot of people, they may go on an anti-inflammatory diet and their inflammation is really low. They check C-reactive protein, it's low, signs of inflammation are low, but then their limbic system is dysregulated, and it's actually in the brain itself instead of somewhere else in the body. So there could be also gut infections, for example, that contribute to inflammation, which then increases inflammation in the brain as well. But yeah, sometimes it's just the brain is overreactive after a stressful event or some sort of chemical injury. So those are some of the main like physical features of brain fog. Sometimes there's decreased like blood flow to the brain and oxygen flow to the brain too. And I have an article on my website of different ways to increase blood flow to the brain, especially in people who have had brain injuries, right? Like
Yes.
that's often common. And then of course there's like intestinal permeability, so leaky gut can also contribute to brain fog too. So there's so many different things that can contribute to it, right? And so many different physical features of brain fog and underlying factors that it's often hard to pinpoint exactly what a person's dealing with, but and that's usually when it's best to work with different practitioners to rule things out, so that over time you can pick away at the underlying factors and your brain starts to become more clear. So yeah,
more and more people are becoming their own practitioners in a way, with doing their Google researches, because they feel let down by the people who they've previously trusted with their health. It's hard to get the directions on who to see, because no one else. Everyone's telling you that there's nothing wrong with you. You know there's something wrong because you don't feel as sharp as as before.
Mm-hmm.
But who to see? Where to go for these tests that you can do.
Oh yeah, it's tricky too, because I mean, I went to a lot, and it gets to the point where, and I think a lot of people nowadays there's so much information out there and they're becoming educated themselves. So I bet if you like surveyed a lot of practitioners and doctors, naturopaths and functional medicine practitioners, a lot of them would probably say people are more informed than ever before. And so people definitely need to take an active role in their healing, because otherwise, if especially if someone's gotten really sick, I don't want to make it seem too bleak, but if you don't take an active role in it, it's very likely you'll be disappointed, because I'm sure some people just go to one practitioner and that practitioner may not be the best fit, or maybe they're recommending a treatment that's maybe not best for you right at that moment. And so you really need to take control of it yourself. And of course, working with practitioners is really, it's you can't do it alone. You need to work with people, with practitioners, but you can't also just like hand it over to them and be like, oh, fix me. You know what I mean? Because in my experience, you don't get as far as you could if you were really figuring things out yourself and playing a part in the process, right? And so yeah, and it's really trial and error too. Like you got to go to some practitioners, and then they get you a little bit better, and then you got to go to a different one. And that's just the way it goes with these type of things, right? But over time things start to add up and there's improvements, right? So and yeah, so it's hard to say exactly. I can't be like, oh, go see a functional medicine practitioner, because some functional medicine practitioners like can't help. Sometimes they don't help everyone, and they can't solve everything. Doesn't mean they don't play a huge part in it, but then you may need to go see someone who, like a bioenergetic practitioner, which I worked with one as well. And sometimes people need things like neurofeedback, which is like usually offered by a psychologist. So it's like there's so many different people that need to play a part in your healing process that it's hard to say exactly go to this type of doctor. There's a lot of different.
So it's not black and white. You've got to take the first steps and then make decisions at each step.
Yeah, and it's incredibly complicated. Like to be honest, like it's to keep track of everything and go like, okay, I'm gonna go see this person, I'm gonna go see that person, I'm gonna consult with this person, and then you get ideas from all of them, and then you start to figure out, okay, what's going on with me, and you can put together like a game plan with them, instead of them putting a game plan together for you. You need to people need to be a part of it, right? So
Well,
yeah.
that would be hard to do if you've got brain fog to have everything so
Yeah, that's the other big problem with this, right? Is yeah, uh, yeah, and if you're not thinking clear, you're not thinking straight. It's a lot more difficult to be able to put together a plan for yourself, and that's usually you still need to, yeah, you still need to go. You need to start somewhere. You need to see someone, and but and even with the brain fog, like maybe you're slower at putting the plan together, right? But as long as you're taking the steps, that's the key thing, right? As long as you're, even if it's little steps, that's better than not taking the steps. So, yeah, even with the brain fog, it's possible, you know.
Would you recommend people keep a written diary for people, just in the off chance that you forget important details?
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I've a lot of practitioners recommended I like journal how I feel based on what I'm doing and taking. That's usually not. I haven't been very good at that. What I've done is I have lots and lots of notes, and I write down everything. It's just not in a journal format. So I don't think people are quite as obsessive as me. So maybe if they take like 30 minutes into it, like from their day, and uh, write how they felt and think about what they did throughout the day and what they took, and if they did that every day, I think it'd be very important. Yeah.
Now, people that are watching this video now, they may be thinking to themselves, maybe I've got brain fog and I don't really realize it. Maybe I'm not at my full potential. See,
Mm-hmm.
how can, is there some test or, that you can just do on yourself, or any signs that you have brain fog, even early stage?
Um, well, the first thing that popped in my head when you said tests, I actually thought of blood tests. So I don't know if I can just go into that for a
Oh,
second.
sure, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll say I worked with a functional neurologist. They're called chiropractic neurologists, and they are able to assess brain function using, I forget what it's called, but it's some sort of eye tracking movement.
Right.
And there's another software called NeuroTracker that I know practitioners use. So there are practitioners who are able to assess brain function and see if you've had a brain injury essentially. And people may not have hit their head. They may be taking medications, for example, that they're not even aware of that have slowly contributed to a brain injury, or impaired their brain function in some way. Because, for example, the functional neurologist that I saw, he sees a lot of people who are on Wellbutrin, which actually I was on. I don't want to freak people out if they're on it, but he saw a decline in cognitive function in people who took Wellbutrin. When they stopped it, there was a big increase, which is a good sign. But I suspect in some people, if they're on it long enough, you may actually need to see a functional neurologist who uses different neuroplasticity exercises to heal the brain. Some people may need that above and beyond like just stopping the medication. But anyway, so the functional neurologist can do tests to see, like usually with their initial assessment, they'll do comprehensive testing with the eye movements to see where you have weaknesses in your brain function. So that's one way in particular. But yeah, I was going to go into different blood tests that I think people should probably do, in particular, like checking for hormones too, because a lot of people they may have low testosterone or hypothyroidism, but like those are very common today. Like men often have low testosterone, and hypothyroidism is common in men and women. And so checking for free T3 and total and free testosterone is, I think, very important, because that can often, especially in older individuals, as you get older, older men, their testosterone can start to plummet, right? So, and it could be as simple as going on bioidentical hormone replacement, and then brain fog goes away. So, that's another thing to consider, especially as people are getting older. If someone's getting older, to check those things, and even in young people too, because there's a lot of men in their 20s and early 30s now with low testosterone, and then of course hypothyroidism is rampant now too. So yeah, so checking things like especially free T3. A lot of doctors won't check free T3, so they'll check your TSH and they'll check your T4, but they won't check free T3. So a lot of people have low free T3, and that could be contributing to their brain fog as well. So as you can see, there's a lot of different factors that could be contributing, right? But those are some blood tests off the top of my head right now that I thought of that people should probably look into, Yeah.
One very scary thing you mentioned was a drug. You said the word very quickly, which could
Oh,
cause. If you can say
well, what
it's-
did I call it? It was Wellbutrin.
okay.
Yeah, so it's an antidepressant. And the functional neurologist that I saw and I've consulted with and talked to, he sees people who often are taking Wellbutrin have a decline in brain function. And so what was interesting is I was put on medication,
Yes.
including Wellbutrin, after my concussions, and I eventually I said I got to get off this because I feel like I have cognitive decline. So
Gosh.
yeah, and so it's just interesting that he's seeing this in patients because he sees a lot of people who have had concussions as well, and people are being put on Wellbutrin for energy and depression. And I mean, the drug is effective, but if it's showing signs of cognitive decline in people, I mean that's a problem, obviously.
It's
So
a bit of a problem. It's major. They've been given a poison of sorts, aren't they? If it has that function.
yeah, and yeah, and there's other drugs that can cause issues as well. Like there's a lot of anticholinergic drugs out there, right, that people are taking every day that can contribute to cognitive decline as well. So people need to definitely pay attention to their medications. And
Gosh.
yeah, and yeah, I do think a lot of medications nowadays are, I don't want to freak people out, but um, I think they're a problem, right? They're not good for the brain. A lot of them, not some of them. People take them, they're fine. They feel great. That's fine, and that's good for them. But if you're not feeling well and you're taking, like a lot of people nowadays, I think the average American takes like 7 medications. I think it was the last time I checked. So I mean, if you're taking that many medications, you need to, keep in mind like, okay, what could be causing, like it could be side effects from drugs, just brain fog could be from the medications, right? So and perhaps the people who are watching your show, maybe they're more health conscious and they're not taking as many medications, but if a person is, I think they definitely need to keep an eye on it, right? And to talk to their doctor, talk to their pharmacist. Don't just come off the medications, obviously, but definitely realize that it could be something that some of your taking is impairing your brain. So yeah.
It is very scary. Gosh. I guess
Sorry, I feel like I'm just freaking everyone out here.
no, we always try and end our sermons on a positive note. So it doesn't matter what happens between the beginning and almost the end, but at the end, we always try and find something positive to say about brain fog. We might be struggling, but I'm sure we'll find something.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize 7 medications on average, is it, for an American?
Yeah, I read that. I don't know the source off the top of my head, but I read that it was a few years ago, maybe more now. I don't know, but it's the average, right? So some people take none, but I mean, to think about it, if it's the average, so some people are taking like 10, 14. Like
Gosh.
I think it's insane. And there have been some people, I do consults with people, and I try to point them in the right direction to different practitioners and stuff, and try to help give them good information. And this one woman was on 6 psychiatric drugs. It's just I don't know what doctors are thinking that they think that it's a good idea to tweak brain chemistry that much with that many drugs. I mean, I think that's obviously concerning, right?
Very
So
concerning.
yeah, and this woman was young too, so she was around my age. So that's it's insane to me, but yeah.
It is. Gosh, and we just don't know that much. Scientists aren't that, do not have a deep understanding of functions of the body.
No, yeah, and it's like a giant experiment, because these drugs haven't been around for a long time. So it's it's like it's an experiment on humans. I think it's unethical, to be honest. But I mean, if I do want to point out, like if someone has like schizophrenia and they're really sick, I mean, they sometimes need a drug, right? But it's 6 of them seems like maybe they need to reassess what they're doing, right? So that's how I see it anyway.
How does hormone imbalance cause brain fog, or how can it cause brain fog?
Well, so testosterone and thyroid hormone both
Yes.
they both support mitochondria functioning. So
Right.
um, so if you're really depleted in thyroid or testosterone, for example, I'm speaking from, I guess, a male perspective here, bringing up the testosterone, but if you're really low, I mean, your mitochondria won't be working optimally, and you'll have lower energy and you'll experience brain fog. There's a lot of people who they just go on testosterone replacement and they have such mental, like, amazing mental clarity all of a sudden. You know, the problem, of course, is usually once you're on testosterone replacement, not always, but usually if you get on it, you need to stay on it for life, because if you come off, then the brain fog is going to be even worse. But
Oh,
so, of course, it's best probably to try to figure out the underlying factors that could be contributing to the hormone imbalance before jumping on medication. But I mean, there's so many different factors nowadays in our environment and our
there
food
is.
and everything
Even the water
contribute.
you're drinking, because they
Yeah,
use
even the water.
because they have those
Yeah,
birth control pills. They
yeah,
recycle water.
yeah,
People,
and
yeah, people don't
yeah,
realize that the water is recycled. It doesn't come all from the skies. If they're living in a city, they don't really
yeah,
want to know where the water came from.
yeah. And there's medications. They find medications in the water too, and lead and mercury and Roundup and glyphosate, and yeah, it's not good. That's definitely recommend filtering water to everyone.
I think it's a necessity.
Yeah,
Glyphosate. It's interesting you should mention that. It's a name that's come up on several of our previous SAMAs. How can glyphosate um, contribute or trigger a brain fog?
yeah. This is one thing I haven't delved too much into the research, but I do know it can significantly impact the gut microbiome. That's for
Yeah.
one.
Yes.
So, and if it's and a lot of people nowadays have uh, gut problems, right? And
Right.
yeah, I actually haven't researched much into it because it's actually kind of depressing to realize the extent of the problem, to be honest. So, uh, but yeah, that's one. Uh, that's a huge factor, and that's the thing is I actually, now that we're talking about it, I need to look more into it. I've been meaning to research more of how to, like, I guess, detox or protect yourself from glyphosate. I have heard, I think selenium can help, and, like, eating broccoli and, like, cauliflower, and these are just things that are popping into my head. I think I've read about, but uh, yeah, I mean, if it's impacting the gut microbiome as much as I've read it does, then
Yes.
yeah, it can definitely affect brain function and contribute to brain fog. And I think, now that I think about it, I remember reading about how there's a study, it was a really interesting study about how there's a higher rate of post-concussion syndrome nowadays, or like once people have a brain injury,
Yes.
it seems that they're having a harder time recovering. And
Right.
in this report, it was a report, they laid out that glyphosate is likely one of the contributing factors that is blocking
Gosh.
healing, which is like, that's a shame, obviously, right? Like, it just, because it's everywhere. It's in our soil. It's hard to get away from it. And I've heard that even organic food can still end up having it on it. Like, anyways, I don't want to get too depressing here about it, but yeah, that's a huge
Well,
area of, yeah.
it's a truth that needs to be spoken about.
Mm.
Basically, if you eat, then you've got glyphosate in your body, unless you
Yeah,
live in an Amazonian village. Gosh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
off the grid.
Yeah.
No, we've had we encourage questions both online, just typing under the live broadcasting video on Facebook, or if you've registered on Zoom, just type in the chat box. And Patrick Duncan has asked the question, um, Jordan, do you have any thoughts or experience in using DMSO to treat brain fog? And if so, topically, orally, or both?
Was it? Did you say it was DMSO? Is that what it was?
Right. Yes.
I've heard of it. I don't have an opinion on it because I actually don't know exactly what it is. It's
Okay.
so if I Googled it and I looked into it, so no, I don't have any experience with it, unfortunately. But I feel like yeah, I just can't picture exactly what it is. So I'd have to get back to him.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay. Now,
Yeah.
we touched on before about emotions, anxiety, depression, and the link with brain fog. How can depression or anxiety be tied in with brain fog?
Oh yeah, that's another big part of it too, is a lot of people are chasing like different supplements or foods or
Yes.
therapies, and it really a lot of the time it comes down to psychological trauma and
Yeah.
stress.
Right.
So that was a part of my problem as well, actually. And I remember um, it seems like a lot of people who have post-concussion syndrome, who they don't recover, they often have psychological issues underneath it. So a lot of people already have anxiety and depression leading up to the brain injury, and
Yes.
then they don't recover. And that's not to say their symptoms are in their head, like it's not psychological. They have been injured, but
Yes.
um, yeah, often, yeah, it seems like a lot of people who like like trauma can, like if you've had like adverse childhood experiences, so they call them ACEs. That's a big part of it as well. And if you have trauma, you end up having like symptoms of like dissociation, so like depersonalization, derealization. And so that was actually like a big issue of mine too. And yeah, and so that's a whole other part of it. And in that it's kind of linked to like the limbic system dysregulation that I mentioned before. So that's like a part of the trauma, right? So so some of the things that helped me with that was, so I did a bunch of neurofeedback. Things like EMDR can help too. So that's the thing, is if people they would know if a psychological, if it's their brain fog is due to psychological trauma, if during stressful situations, for example, their brain fog gets a lot worse, and they kind of they dissociate, or they don't feel like they're in their body and things are foggy. So if that happens to someone, then it's usually there's a psychological component, and that's when things like neurofeedback or EMDR was another thing I did, which was very helpful. Uh, those things can play a part, and then in the healing process. And then there's of course like doing things to stimulate the vagus nerve too. So that's a huge part of um, brain function and mental clarity as well as and that's of course linked to trauma. And it's hard to explain, it's all in my head, all these ideas, but or all these facts and stuff. But yeah, it's yeah, trauma is a huge part of it, and it was for me too. And um yeah, so I guess that's what I would say about that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the vagus nerve, you're talking about
Mhm.
stimulating the vagus nerve. Is this a nerve that we can exercise to help overcome brain fog?
Yeah, it's I have an article. If you search how to stimulate the vagus nerve for better mental health, if you go or just go to my website and you can search vagus nerve and you'll find the article. So there's like 13 main ways that I list how to stimulate the vagus nerve. So some of the ways that I can think of right now is like cold exposure, for example. So taking like cold showers can
Yes.
stimulate the vagus nerve. So a lot of people find that they'll have a lot more energy, and I saw research that it seems to increase dopamine and norepinephrine if you expose yourself to cold.
Yes.
So that's one way. Like deep breathing, like yoga, uh, ear acupuncture is that's one of the most helpful things I've done, is ear acupuncture,
Oh,
and it seemed to be more effective for me than regular acupuncture. So um, yeah, so there's different ways to stimulate the vagus nerve like that, um, and can improve your mood. And then so if your brain fog is due to depression or anxiety, stimulating the vagus nerve can then improve your mood and reduce your stress, and brain fog can reduce as well from that. So um, yeah, so that's my
I
little
thought
flavor of
if
it.
you know you're going to have a cold shower, wouldn't it increase your stress or immediately before the plunge?
Well, yeah, I guess immediately before, but it's more after it's done, right? Like, because I usually recommend people do it for like, start with like 30 seconds at the end of your shower, like just turn it on cold, and then work your way up to longer periods of time. But yeah, it honestly is pretty stressful. So I know
Yes.
that's counterintuitive, but when it stimulates the vagus nerve when you're done, it seems to linger throughout like the rest of the day, or at least the morning, where you feel like, oh, I feel a bit better, especially if you do it regularly too, right? So
Right.
yeah.
Well, I guess people that've got teenage children, they'll have this as a natural thing anyway, because they'd be having a shower and then the children turn on the taps as they always do, and
Yeah.
cold showers. Now,
Yeah.
now, Vinny, the reach of this program is worldwide, and a lot of the references you're giving to health medical professionals are for the more advanced countries. In America, you've got specialists which can help, but other countries don't. So if someone is in a country which has just got a doctor, an allopathic doctor, and they've got no one else to turn to, what would you recommend they do? If they think they've got brain fog and they're thinking, what steps should I take? They can't go for these tests for their eye tests for moving dots on the screen. They can't do those kinds of tests. Are there other
Yeah.
kinds of tests that they can do?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I'm so used to, so like I live in Canada and like
Yeah,
we have a ton of support and resources and great medical system here, right? So it's hard to trying to put myself in a person's shoes like that. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, I usually say try to look at your diet to begin with, and then
yes,
there are some, like if they're really lost, I mean, there are some great different like brain nutrients and brain supplements that can really help, and there's herbs that can help. Like I always found that rhodiola and ginseng always help my brain function. And so I guess if I was in that type of situation and they don't have access to practitioners um, and testing and stuff, I guess I would. It's not the best way to go about it, and that's actually how I, weirdly enough, went about it originally. Was I tested a bunch of different things. I did things. I saw how I reacted, and then if it worked, if it helped, I kept doing that. And I didn't work, I abandoned it. So it
yes.
would have to be kind of more of experimentation on yourself in a way. Um, and and I did that for a while, and it's not the best way to go about it. It's better to have practitioners that they can get feedback from, and they can test different supplements on you and determine which ones are the best for you. But if you have no other choice, then I think it's a matter of trying things, trial and error, I guess. And trying to think if there's, I can't really think if there's any online tests people can do. I know this just popped in my head. There's this program called Brain HQ, which it's a neuroplasticity program. So I mean, this is for like, and it's created by this neuroscientist, respected neuroscientist, I believe. It's really well done, and it's a bunch of just brain exercises to help keep your brain sharp into old age. And I think it's Brain HQ. It's something to look into. So that's something, if they have internet access, they can use that and try to keep their brain sharp with that. So.
Now we touched on EMDR before.
Yeah.
Is there any risks? This is a question asked by Patrick Duncan. Does it carry any risks? And are there any dangers that you've got to watch out for?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you have to find a qualified practitioner, like an EMDR therapist. So there's like EMDR websites, and I guess I didn't even say what it stands for. So it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So perhaps the person that asked the question already knows what it is, but it's just a trauma therapy, right? And so you need to find someone who's trained in it, and then there's different levels of EMDR specialists or therapists, and you want to try to get I think it's level 3, the highest level. They have the most training, and I don't think there's any risk. Like I just saw benefits. I know if someone has a lot of trauma, I mean, it can be a lot to take at once. Like I know it's quite a lot of things come up. But you need to, I just try to find a really good therapist. That's the best way, what I can say about that. I mean, I don't know if there's any negative effects. Perhaps people have negative reactions to it, but I never did. It was very helpful for me. So, yeah.
Do you think would you think it's a good idea for people to ask their doctors whether it's possible to reduce the number of drugs that they take for conditions that they have, and try and find the root causes of those symptoms?
Yeah, I think so, but I don't usually, it's not the doctor that's going to do that, right? So it's more of, you definitely need to talk to your doctor about reducing your drugs. That's for sure. Don't just go reduce them. But I would say you need to also have a game plan as to what you're going to do before you reduce the drugs, because you don't want to just reduce the drugs. You want to, have some other practitioners and integrative physicians and naturopaths or whatever who are helping you find the root cause, and you're getting treatment to deal with the root cause before you just stop all the medication. So yeah, definitely bring it up with your doctor about reducing medications. But I guess from what I know, the medical doctor usually isn't going to be the one that will help you find the root cause, and they'll probably say, no, you don't necessarily, you shouldn't stop your medication. So you're going to have to, yeah. And the thing is if your doctor's not supportive with what you're trying to do and find the root cause, and doesn't understand that you're seeing other practitioners, and and he's fine with that or she's fine with that, then you might have to find a new doctor. That's the other thing is, some doctors don't like that, and they won't be supportive. So yeah, you may have to find a new doctor, I guess. Yeah.
I think the ideal doctor is the doctor you never see. A system where we pay a doctor each week that you don't see them. So it'll be in the doctor's interest to make sure you never see them, so they'd give the best advice, wouldn't they?
Yeah, that would be the best. It would be a lot better than the current system, that's for sure.
Okay. Are there? We're getting close towards the end of the summer. Is there any advice would you like to give people who are not sure whether they have brain fog, or if they're fairly sure they have brain fog? What are the very first steps they should do to confirm their worst fears?
Well, I guess what I mentioned earlier is finding a functional neurologist or a chiropractic neurologist. So they will do testing that will tell you if you have a brain injury, essentially. So but you could still, the thing is, you could still have brain fog and your brain functions fine. So that's always something to consider. Is you could go, they say you're fine, but you still have brain fog. Usually people, I guess, generally they know if they have brain fog, but yeah, not always. So I would think starting there. You can also like another test you can do is a QEEG. So that's another brain test. So it's usually offered by neurofeedback practitioners. They map out your brain waves and they see where you have abnormalities, essentially. And sometimes there can be signs to suggest that you have brain fog. For example, some people have really high alpha brain waves, and that can contribute to brain fog. So, or there are other abnormalities like really high beta brain waves that can contribute to anxiety, for example. So that's another test that can be helpful. And then if you're seeing a neurofeedback practitioner, they can put together a protocol for you to train your brain and to promote neuroplasticity so you feel better. So those are the two, I guess, diagnostic tests I can think of right now. There are probably others. SPECT scans is another one by it's popular by Dr. Daniel Amen. He popularized it. That's another one to consider. You can see if you have reduced blood flow to parts of your brain and other abnormalities in your brain function. So yeah, those are the three, I guess, main ones that I can think of right now. Yeah.
It's a scary thought, thinking that a huge proportion of the population may have brain fog. And they're driving, they're piloting our planes and driving on our roads, and their reflexes may be slower, their decision making may be slower. It's quite a scary thought.
Yeah, and it's sad too that that's the case, that there's a lot of people out there who are struggling with it, and they don't really have like many places to turn. Like there's a lot of information out there, but sometimes too much information can be a problem too, right? Like the people don't know what to do or what to do next. So usually when I work with people, I try to help them. Like I get their history and then I try to point them in the right direction. Like, hey, focus on this instead of all this other stuff, or go see this type of practitioner, or even sometimes refer them to a practitioner that helped me, right? So that it's yeah, otherwise people could be quite confused, right? So
Oh,
anyways.
sure. I'm sure that it's on purpose that misinformation as well is out there in great volumes to
Yeah.
totally confuse people and think, oh, well, this isn't working. I have to continue my medication. Now,
Yeah.
you've mentioned your website before. If you can tell, please, our audience your website so they know where to turn to.
Yeah, so it's called Optimal Living Dynamics. If you just search my name, Jordan Fallis, it's the first result on Google. Yeah, I write research and write articles. I haven't been doing it as much recently, but I'm hoping to get back to it more soon. I do consults with people through there. I have like a Grow Your Brain program. There's some supplements, but yeah, if you're interested in what I've been saying, check it out. And yeah, I have a Facebook page and stuff. So yeah, you can just search. People can just search my name either through Facebook or just through Google, and it'll show up. So yeah.
And health advice is always better if it's given by a person that's been through the system and found the way that was best for them. That sort of advice is always the best. You've mentioned ginseng as a
Yeah.
is you know there's any other thing that you'd recommend everyone who's got brain fog take to help their condition? Superfoods.
Well, let me think. Well, I guess test for vitamin D for sure, and check vitamin D. And if you're deficient, take vitamin D.
Yes.
Get enough sunlight too. That's a big one too. Magnesium. I often recommend magnesium because it's just a lot of people are deficient. But then another one, a really good nutrient for brain fog is acetyl-L-carnitine. So that supports mitochondria functioning too. So if you have mitochondria function, you take acetyl-L-carnitine, you should see improvements in brain function and energy and a reduction in brain fog. Yeah, so yeah, that's usually the main brain supplement in particular, acetyl-L-carnitine that I recommend. I mean, there's tons. If you go to my website and you read through my articles, there's like I've tried so many supplements. So those are just the ones that pop up right now. But I mean,
Yes.
if I like later, there'll be others. I'll be like, oh, I forgot to mention this one. You know? So there's a lot. Yeah, that vitamin D, magnesium, and acetyl-L-carnitine in particular. Those are the ones that are in my head right now, and they're quite helpful, especially if you're deficient in magnesium and vitamin D. Yeah.
Yes. Fantastic. So go out in the sunshine. If you live in a country that doesn't have sunshine, even better, go for 4 weeks in a place that does have sunshine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that should be the positive note that we end this summer. Jordan, thank you so much for being on our show. Thank you for explaining to us what brain fog is and how we can overcome the brain fog. It's been fantastic having you on our show.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun. Yeah.
Thanks. It's very late at your side of town, so I'll pull the plug now. So thank you so much, and thank you everyone for watching and participating online. And we'll see you all next week. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, thanks, Jordan. Thanks a lot. It's appreciated. It was a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I felt it was fun chatting with you. So I'm glad you had me on. That was good. And yeah, I've been on 3 podcasts, and I feel like this one was my most enjoyable. I liked it. So
well, normally people say, "Oh, this is the most painful. I'm never going to go on this show again." No, it normally is good. It's not so formal. We're not uptight here. We just want the information out there, and experts like yourself who have been through it, they truly are the best ones. And so, what information you gave is absolutely solid gold. You know, you've tried so many things, but more importantly, you've kept a log of what's worked for you, and
yeah.
And you've put it all together, and somehow you've got 1.5 million people. That's a lot of zeros, brother. That's a lot of zeros.
I know, it's crazy. Google said, well, that's the sad thing is Google, they were sending me a lot of traffic, and then I don't know if you heard about August 1st last year, they started reducing traffic to natural health websites. So I lost a bunch of traffic, unfortunately. But up until that point, yeah, there's just tons and tons of people just that's like when my content's really long and in depth, right? So
Sure.
Google they like that type of content, so they just put it up on the first page for a lot of different search terms, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. But yeah,
Well,
I'm still getting traffic. It's just it's reduced, unfortunately. But
it's
yeah,
criminal.
what's that?
Oh, I was just sorry. I was just saying it's criminal how they're always trying to sort of bump us off, trying to renegade us to the trash can.
Yeah, I know, and it's because you think about it, if people are searching for information, like they're just gonna see the status quo info. Like they're gonna see WebMD, and which
Sure.
I understand why they've made the change, but the thing is up until when they made that change, Google's algorithm rewarded the content that people liked the most and wanted the most. So mine kind of just went to the top because it's good info that people are like, oh, perfect, this is what I want. But
Yeah.
now it's not rewarded as much because it's because of the content, the type of like what I'm promoting, which is not strictly conventional medicine, and right. So
It's
it's too
naughty.
bad, but what's that?
It's naughty.
Yeah,
You're talking about
yeah,
naughty.
yeah. So, anyways, but yeah, it's yeah. I still can't believe when I it's seeing that number like put 1.5 million. It's crazy. Like I still can't believe it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
You've done very well.
yeah.
Okay, well, you take care. Have a great evening. Thanks again for being on our show. Absolutely appreciate it. I'm sure your reach will have, we'll be publishing our video on what's already broadcasting live on Facebook, which has got over 16,000. We've got our own video hosting site, speaker2videos.com, and of course on YouTube. So you get a lot of people that'll be watching this video and thinking, gosh, maybe there is something I can do. And now I know what to do.
Yeah.
And then reach
Well,
me.
yeah. That's great though. Thanks for having me. It was fun talking to you.
Okay, you take care, Jordan. Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
All right. Bye.